Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So just bear with me a minute. I planned to do this live stream last night, but unfortunately I fell asleep. So I hope that people are able to watch this on the playback. I know that it's very early in the morning, so a lot of people may not be able to watch this live, but I hope that you're able to watch it later. So for this video, I want to talk about the election and what it means for Black people. As many people know, Donald Trump has won re-election. He won by a substantial margin. He won 295 electoral votes compared to Kamala Harris's 226 electoral votes. In addition to winning the Electoral College, Donald Trump also won the popular vote as well by millions of votes. And so this is the reality that we are waking up to. And I just want to take time to just talk about this election, uh, talk about the implications of this election. And I also want to talk about why Donald Trump won. And I guess I can start with that. Donald Trump ran on hatred, fear, and division. He played into people's hatred. He played into people's hatred of immigrants. He played into sexism. He played into division of men and women, division of uh, citizens against immigrants. He ran on white supremacy. He ran on transphobia. He ran on that. And a lot of people played into those divisions. He ran on evangelical themes, even though this is not really even a religious man. He ran on, abortion. A lot of these people, these far right people, decided to vote with him or vote for him because of his position on abortion, because of his position on LGBTQ issues. Because of that, a lot of right leaning evangelicals decided to vote for him. That's part of the reason why he won, because he played on fears, he played on hatred, he played on division. And a lot of people fed into that. There was the division between men and women. And I think that is by far one of the biggest divisions that helped elect Donald Trump. He played on sexism. There are a lot of men in our community, unfortunately, who are misogynistic, who actually hate women. There are a lot of men in our community, and just men in general in society, who cannot see a woman as a leader. They will not accept a woman as a leader. And I'm going to go into that a little bit later. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that particular issue, especially when it comes to the Black community. There's a lot to unpack in that particular issue. Now, one thing that I want to point out, even though there's been a lot of discussion about Black men supporting Donald Trump for some of the reasons that I laid out, in terms of some misogyny within our Black community. So you had, a substantial minority of Black men that decided to vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump doubled his numbers in terms of the amount of support that he received from Black men this election cycle. Double the percentage of Black men supported him. But let's be perfectly clear, only a minority of Black men supported him. And what I'm going to do is share a graphic that I have that outlines some statistics from, these are some statistics from Black enterprise, and hopefully I can do that. Let's see. Bear with me one second. Okay, so hopefully you're all able to see this. So this is a breakdown of the election by race, sex and race. So black men overwhelmingly supported Kamala Harris. 78% of black men voted for Kamala Harris. Only 20% of black men voted for Donald Trump. So let's be clear, you cannot blame black men for the outcome in this election. Because when you look at all these other demographics, you see that black men supported Kamala Harris more than every other group of people except for black women. Black women supported Kamala Harris more than anyone else. And even if all black men supported Kamala Harris, it is still possible that, Donald Trump would have still won. Black men alone do not bear blame for this election result. But I will point this out. There was a substantial increase. From what I recall, I thought it was like double the percentage of black men had voted for Donald Trump this go around compared to last time. So that does have, that did have some kind of impact on this election. And that's something that needs to be evaluated. We need to understand why that occurred. There needs to be a deep dive on why, there was a substantial increase in the number of black men that supported Donald Trump. Because if we don't do that, we will see a repeat of this situation. And, I'm going to talk a little bit later about those black people who decided to vote for Trump and, discuss my position on that particular issue. But when you look at this photo, this photo that breaks down the demographics, so much can be taken from this. The biggest thing that stands out is the support that white women gave Donald Trump. The majority of white women decided to vote for Trump, as you can see in this photo right here. 52% of white women voted for Donald Trump, and 47% of white women voted for Kamala Harris. These women, voted against their interests as women. They voted for a man who celebrated uh, overturning Roe v. Wade. This man celebrated that decision. And so now we have a situation where you have a president in the White House who is opposed to a woman's right to choose. And then you have a Republican controlled Senate. And it's a high possibility that the House will also be controlled by the Republicans. So that means that they have full reign and control over the branches of government. And we know right now, when it comes to the Supreme Court, the right dominates the Supreme Court. So they have control over all three branches. It looks like that's where we're headed. And that's going to have huge implications when it comes to women's rights and everybody's rights. So despite the fact that this man opposes a woman's right to choose, despite the fact that this man has made all kinds of sexist comments about women, despite the fact that this man bragged about sexually assaulting women and has been charged with sexually assaulting women, despite all of that, white women decided to vote for this man by a majority. So if blame needs to be pointed to any group of people, one of those groups is white women. 52% of them supported this man. And it proves to me that the majority of white women are not the allies of black women. This alone speaks volumes about that. Despite all this rhetoric about women's liberation and, you know, uh, feminism and all that kind of stuff, this makes it abundantly clear that the majority of white women are not allies with black women because they literally voted against their interests in favor of a racist white man. You know, their race trumped their gender. Their race trumped their interests as women. So that's an eye opener, in terms of this election. And then another thing that needs to be pointed out is the Latino community. The Latino community and their huge support for Donald Trump. I was looking at a statistic that was on, I think it was on Fox News. They said that overall, 41% of Hispanics voted for Donald Trump. And then when you look at this breakdown right here, 54% of Latino men voted for Donald Trump, and 37% of Latino women voted for Donald Trump. So, despite the fact that Donald Trump basically ran a campaign based on anti immigrant sentiment, ran a campaign based on hatred towards immigrants, in particular immigrants of quote unquote color, despite all of that, despite that anti-immigrant rant that comedian did at that Trump rally in Madison Square Garden, making all these racist comments about immigrants, and the crowd laughing at it and enjoying that mockery of immigrants and Hispanics. Despite all of that, Latinos men, a majority of Latino men voted for this man. And a substantial minority of Latino women voted for this man. And it just makes me ponder, like, why in the hell would you vote for a man who launched his campaign based on hatred of Latinos? This man launched his campaign by calling Mexicans rapists and criminals. He launched his very first campaign on that. And he's played into this uh, white supremacist mindset and this fear of the browning of America. That's what his campaign has been all about. But yet and still, a majority of Latino men, 54%, decide to vote for this man. And a substantial minority of Latino women decide to vote for this man. 37%. That's insane to me. And it doesn't make any kind of rational sense. I think part of the reason why, you have so many of these Latinos that voted for this man is that they are trying to identify with whiteness. They suffer, some of them suffer from self hatred. Some of them feel like Donald Trump is not talking about them because they are quote unquote legal immigrants and he's only talking about those illegal immigrants. Donald Trump again is playing into fears of the browning of America, but these people are too short-sighted to see it. I see these Latinos that are Latinos for Trump and all that kind of stuff. Those are people that are literally out of their mind, just like these Negroes running around here talking about they're with blacks for Trump and running around with these goofy mega hats on, which are really nothing but modern day dunce caps. And so, there's a lot that can be discussed about this, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Um, but yeah, that's just something that I wanted to point out. So we cannot blame black men for this election result. You have other groups of people, as I pointed out, white women who voted by a majority for Donald Trump, had Hispanic men that voted for Donald Trump, uh, the majority of which voted for him. And then there are other issues that need to be discussed as well, and I'm going to do a whole segment on this live stream about like some of the reasons why Kamala Harris lost, but I'll just touch on some of the issues right now. The situation in Gaza had probably had a huge impact on this election. In Michigan, which is a battleground state, you have a substantial Muslim and Arab population, and they see that this, excuse me, they see that the Biden administration provided support to Israel while this genocide was unfolding in Gaza. They provided weapons, they provided funding, they provided support. They opposed, any efforts that were made on the international level to try to condemn the genocide that is going on there. Tens of thousands of people have died in Gaza, while the United States continues to support Israel. United States continues to fund Israel. United States continues to give Israel the weapons that are used to bomb the babies and kill the civilians. So it's understandable that people would have outrage in the Arab community. It's understandable that Muslims would be outraged by what is happening in Gaza and by the United States' continued support of the Israeli government, despite the ongoing genocide. So you had a significant segment of Muslims and Arabs in battleground states like Michigan who decided not to vote for Kamala Harris. They either stayed at home or they voted for Trump. And I think that had a huge impact. And the same is true for leftists. They decided to vote against to vote against Kamala Harris for that same reason. And I do believe that had an impact on this election. Now, while I don't blame black men for, you know, this outcome, it's not solely on black men. I do believe that the black men that supported Donald Trump did have an impact on this election, even though they are not fully responsible for the result. I think that they had an impact, and I think that is a shame. That's something that again we need to discuss and analyze. But I just think that it is sickening that black people would actually support this man. The people in our community that decided to vote for Donald Trump, these people are enemies amongst us. They are sellouts. They are enemies of the people. And the reason why I say that is because Donald Trump represents something that's opposed to the interests of black people. He represents white supremacy. It is just crazy that black people would be voting for the same person that the KKK voted for. It is crazy to me that black people would be voting for the same person that all these white supremacists have been rallying behind and supporting. That's sickening to me. It's sickening that black people would vote for a man who supports immunity for police that brutalize and kill black people. It is crazy to me that black people would support a man that supports stop and frisk. It is crazy to me that black people would support a man that opposes affirmative action. It is crazy to me that black people, that some black people supported a man that wants to abolish the Department of Education, a department that made it possible for many of us to go to college, to get an education, to get the funds that we need to go to school. It is crazy to me that any black person in their right mind will vote for a man that wants to basically whitewash history by defunding school systems that teach about the actual history of black people, that teach about slavery and its impact on America. He wants to whitewash all that. But yet and still you have these buck dancing, bootlicking, ass kissing Uncle Ruckuses who decided to vote for this man, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And you all, and the sad fact of the matter is, I have more respect for actual coons than I do for some of these hotels, some of these fake pro-black hustlers, and race hustlers and pimps on here that basically were attacking Kamala Harris while they were basically giving a white supremacist, Donald Trump, all kinds of passes. And even beyond that, some of these grifters, these fake woke black uh, commentators here on YouTube and throughout social media were attacking Kamala Harris while they were actually praising Donald Trump. But yet and still, despite that anti-black agenda that that Trump has, these people basically found themselves attacking the only real opposition to this man, while low-key praising this man. These people are worse than the coons and sellouts because these people masquerade around like they are here for the black community while they did everything in their power to basically undermine the only real opposition to a man that panders to white supremacy. And I would not be surprised if some of these people are paid Trump agents, literally paid by the Trump campaign to fuel division, to undermine, the Democratic opposition to Donald Trump. So, yeah, I just had to get those thoughts out. This election is a huge tragedy for our community, man. It's going to have a devastating impact on our community for many years to come, even after Donald Trump has left. This man is going to have the power to shape our courts in a fundamentally anti civil rights type of way. He will likely be able to appoint justices, additional justices to the U.S. Supreme Court. This man is going to be appointing judges to the courts of appeals around the country and to the federal district courts around the country. That's going to have a huge impact on the legal landscape. It's going to make it difficult for advocates such as myself to advocate for civil rights in the courts. We already have a Supreme Court that basically gave this man immunity. We already have a Supreme Court that struck down affirmative action. We have a Supreme Court that struck down Roe v. Wade. We have a Supreme Court that's undermining voting rights. The situation is going to get much worse with Donald Trump in power. We have a Congress that has been opposed to voting rights, that has been opposed to police reform. And it's even worse now because now, again, the Senate is dominated by these Republicans. They have a majority in the Senate, and it looks like they're going to have a majority in the House. So we're not going to see the passage of these, the voting rights acts that are pending and languishing in Congress with all kinds of dust on them, while all this other legislation is being passed. Our issues are being neglected. We have a situation, as I mentioned before, where you have a man that supports immunity for these police. That's what he supports. Immunity for the police that kill and brutalize in our community. Immunity for the police that killed George Floyd and Eric Garner and all these other countless black people killed by these police. He wants to have immunity for these police. He wants to empower these police to brutalize our community. He wants to empower these police to stop and frisk black people, even though a federal court in New York found that the stop and frisk system that they had set up there was unconstitutional and discriminatory against black people, black men in particular. But Donald Trump sees that as a model for the rest of the country. And we know that with more interaction between black people and the police, there's going to be more brutality. There's going to be more black lives lost at the hands of these police. But this is the policy that this man supports. That's the policy that he supports. But yet and still, you have some of these fake pro-black buffoons. You have these hoteps that are nothing but hustlers all over social media, attacking that sister Kamala Harris while they prop up and low key praise this man that wants to attack our community, unleash the police on us. And then when you look at the whole thing about militarizing the police against our community, you know, encouraging attacks by the police on protesters, the militarizing the police against the black community. That's what we're looking at with this man in power. We're looking at the possibility of, as I mentioned before, the elimination of the Department of Education and other government agencies that have been beneficial to the black community. We are looking at a situation where um, where we're going to see the elimination of those very important institutions and agencies. We're looking at a situation where that 2025 agenda is going to be pushed forward without much opposition, given the fact that this man has control over the Senate and likely will have control over the House. That's what we're looking at. This is a crazy situation. So I also wanted to talk about lessons that we need to learn and that the Democrats need to learn from this whole election. Um, and some of these things I talked about a while ago. I did a video, a few weeks before the election. I did a video where I talked about reasons why Kamala Harris would, if Kamala Harris were to lose the election, I outlined reasons why that would be the case. And before I go on, rather, I just wanted to shout out Black Hawk. Thanks for tuning in. Black Hawk mentioned that these Black Manosphere ninjas are embarrassing and dumb. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like a lot of the people in the Black Manosphere, the majority of them supported Donald Trump. And the majority of them are basically sellouts. If you support Donald Trump, you are a sellout. You are an enemy of the people. And that's what they are. A lot of them are. They are sellouts. They are supporting a man that supports an agenda that's anti-black. But I just want to reflect on some of the lessons that should have been learned from this whole thing. But before I do that, I want to play some audio from a video that I did weeks ago on TikTok, where I talked about if Kamala Harris loses, here are some of the reasons why she would have lost. So I'm going to play that audio and then go into it in a little bit more detail. Kamala Harris loses this election. These are going to be the reasons why. Number one, the ongoing genocide in Gaza. The Biden administration has been supporting Israel, providing them with money, providing them with weapons, providing them with military support while this ongoing genocide is taking place in Gaza, while Israel is attacking Lebanon and engaged in a broader conflict. So that's going to be a pivotal reason why she loses if she loses. You have many Arabs and Muslims who have decided not to vote for her because of that issue. So in pivotal states like Michigan, that will have a huge impact on this election. The other thing is, it's not only the Arabs and Muslims that are taking that hard line stand. You also have liberals, leftists who are taking a stand that they're not voting for her because of that issue. Under normal circumstances, many of them would support her, but because of the ongoing crisis in Gaza, they are turning their support to third-party candidates, or they're deciding not to vote, period. And that will have some huge impact on this election. Number two, Kamala Harris, just in general, comes across as insincere a lot of times. And the reason why she comes across as insincere is because she doesn't answer simple questions. When news reporters ask her simple questions, she is evasive. She provides answers that are really not responsive to the question. And she sounds very scripted in a lot of her responses. And when she's not scripted, it's just her answers are just all over the place. So that's a second reason why Kamala Harris may not win the election. A third reason why is, the higher food prices and all that kind of stuff. Some of the inflation issue, that's an issue that may be pivotal in this election. People may decide not to vote for her because of that. Another issue that is very important is immigration. The fact that she was appointed as the czar of immigration issues and stuff like that, and we have this immigration crisis going on. That's another huge issue that may impact this election, and it may turn out in a way that we don't want. I don't want to see Donald Trump elected, and I hope and pray that Kamala Harris is elected. But if she loses, that will be one of the reasons why she would have lost, because of the immigration issue. Another reason is this, the mere fact that she is an incumbent and she's talking about all these great things that she wants to implement, even though she's a vice president, she doesn't have, a vice president obviously doesn't have the same power as the president, but many people are asking, if you have all these great ideas, why haven't you implemented them while you're in the White House, while you're a vice president? So that's going to be another reason why she may lose this election. And then the two biggest reasons why she may lose this election is because of her gender. There are too many people, unfortunately, in this day and age that simply do not want to see a woman in the White House. They don't believe that women are capable of leading. And I think that may low-key be one of the biggest reasons why Kamala Harris would lose this election, because a lot of people are sexist and they can't imagine a woman leading this country. They can't accept the idea of a woman leading this country. So that's a huge reason. And that brings me to another point. A lot of people are focused on Black men and how they may be pivotal in causing her to lose this election. But the truth of the matter is, white women will probably play a bigger role in her losing this election than Black men ever could. As many people pointed out, Black men are more supportive of Democratic candidates than many groups of people. They are very supportive of Democratic candidates. And if she loses, more likely than not, it will be many white women who would have turned their back on her, even though she is a woman and she's in support of a woman's right to choose. Just like they turned their back on Hillary Clinton. And then, obviously race is a factor as well. That would have been a reason. if she loses, that may be a factor in the race as well. That may be a reason why she loses. So hopefully this video will not age well. Hopefully she will win the election. So that was a video that I did a few weeks ago before the election, just outlining some of the potential reasons why Kamala Harris would lose if she actually loses. And unfortunately, that became reality. She actually lost this election. I was completely shocked and stunned when I woke up yesterday. I was disturbed, to say the least, because of the news that I saw on my TV screen. Even though part of me knew that that was a very real possibility, my mind just couldn't accept the idea that America would elect such a person. But I really shouldn't, none of us should really be that surprised because America is America after all. That's what America has done for the longest time, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later. But yeah, those are some of the reasons why Kamala Harris lost this election. And a lot of times, uh, one of the things that people are really not paying that much attention to is her gender. I think that that is one of the biggest reasons why she lost this election. So many people cannot accept the idea of a woman being president. We saw this when Hillary Clinton ran, despite, great great debates that, you know, she had with Donald Trump, despite her winning the debates and all this and that, she still lost. The same is true with Kamala Harris. She did well doing her debate against Donald Trump, but at the end of the day, she lost. And one of the big reasons why she lost is because there are so many men and women that cannot accept the idea of a woman being president of the United States. They just can't get their mind around it. And I know that a lot of these, for instance, in the Black manosphere, as Black Hawk pointed out, um, a lot of those men despise the idea of a Black woman being president. They cannot accept a woman being any kind of leader. So there are a lot of men that will not support a woman for president. Period. Not just the misogynistic Black men in our community, but just men in general. There are men that just cannot embrace the idea of a woman leading anything, let alone the United States government. And you had, misogyny put out there openly, like where you had, for instance, Lord Jamar referring to Kamala Harris as a bitch and talking about how she's not capable of running a Dunkin' Donuts, let alone the country. This is the mindset of some men in our community, despite the fact that this woman is a U.S. senator, despite the fact that she's now the vice president of the United States, despite her being attorney general for the state of California, despite all those accomplishments, despite her education and all this experience, in the minds of too many men, this woman was not qualified simply because of her gender. That's the mentality of some people in our community, and we can't ignore that reality. And then also, as I pointed out in in that video that I played earlier, her race played a huge role as well. When I saw all of these pundits talking about how she's moving ahead in the polls and stuff like that, they were talking about how it looks like she's going to win. You had these people that are like forecasters of elections saying, well, she's going to win. The stats are in her favor and all this and that. They were citing various polls that had been made. As they were saying all this stuff, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about how you got to take those polls with a grain of salt when it comes to Black people. You have to automatically uh, factor into your mind that those poll numbers are not accurate. You have to automatically, conclude that you need to take off some of those points from those polls when it comes to black candidates running for either statewide office or for nationwide office. You have to take that into consideration because some of these people that are answering these polls are not being forthright, and then you also have whole segments of people that are racist that are not being taken into account when they run all these polls. Um, so you have to take that into consideration. And so I was skeptical when I saw those polls, making it, and these people forecasting the election saying that she's going to win by a landslide and all this and that. Race has to be taken into account. There are white people that are simply not going to vote for any black person for higher office. Despite all the progress that we've made in this country, we've made substantial progress. All I have to do is look at Maryland, for instance. We have a black governor. We just elected a black woman to U.S. Senate. Um, and we currently have a black vice president. So there's been a lot of progress, but race is still a fundamental issue in this country. And there are so many people that are racist that simply cannot see themselves voting for a black person. That's why you had, Republicans referring to this highly accomplished woman as a DEI hire, basically suggesting that the only reason why she's in her position is because of her race. That's the mentality of a lot of these people, man. So race played a key role, and that's something that cannot be ignored. Another thing that needs to be addressed, another reason why she lost. And before I get into that, I'll just say this. The Democrats need to analyze this whole election if they want to win in the future. They need to analyze this whole thing. And I've heard, like, I've been talking to some of my colleagues, like some people, for instance, were suggesting, well, it's not about messaging and all this and that. Uh, but yeah, so they said it's not about messaging, that's not the issue. They basically didn't want to do any kind of analysis of what went wrong. But I think that there's a need for the Democrats to do a thorough analysis as to what went wrong if we are to move forward and avoid this situation in the future. Another thing that went wrong with this election is that Kamala Harris, and I understand why she would do this, her primary focus was on how bad Donald Trump is. And I'll get to your comments in a second. Her primary focus was on how horrible Donald Trump is, and how he's not how he's not qualified based on a lot of factors. She focused on his detrimental policies, and rightfully so. I understand why she would do so because his policy positions are going to have a devastating impact on the black community and on many other communities. So I understand why she did so. But the problem is she should have been running on her own ideas and what she's going to accomplish, what her focus is. That should have been her primary focus, talking about her ideas and what her vision is for the country. And I'm not saying that she did not talk about her ideas or anything like that. She certainly did talk about some of her policy positions. But the fact of the matter is, she didn't do it enough. She didn't focus on that enough. The primary focus of a lot of the surrogates and even people like myself have been on how detrimental Donald Trump is, as opposed to like her great ideas or what she plans to do for the country. And one of the things that really stands out is the fact that she did not have a simple, strong, penetrating message for the American people. She didn't have a slogan that strongly resonated with the American people. And I think that that's a problem. For instance, when Obama ran for office, he had a strong theme, a theme of hope and change. That was his whole theme. And he Obama had a lot of charisma. There were a lot of people that were enthusiastic supporters of Barack Obama. People were enthralled by Barack Obama because he had that charisma, he had that message that resonated with the people. Whenever people would bring up his name, they automatically thought about the themes of hope and change. And the same thing, unfortunately, is true with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's message of make America great again resonated with a lot of people. That was a simple slogan that resonated with a lot of people. And as far as I'm concerned, make America great again just means make America white again. And some of these ignorant Negroes running around with this hat are too ignorant to realize that that was what that whole movement was about. But it was a slogan that was simple and easy for people to memorize. It was a slogan that resonated with a lot of people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris did not have a strong slogan like that. She had some slogans, like we're not going back and something about moving forward, but it wasn't something that strongly resonated with the people like those other slogans that I mentioned. And one of the main problems that she had is that she failed to distinguish herself from Joe Biden. She was on The View and she was asked, like, what would she do different from Joe Biden? And she basically did not have an answer to that question. And so I think that is another reason why she lost this election. That's one of the problems. And then, as I mentioned before in that clip that I played for you, you have the inflation issue, the economy issue, and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people um, were against her because of that. And they have this false notion that because Donald Trump is a quote unquote businessman, that he is better equipped to deal with the economy. When he's not that great of a businessman. This is a man who filed for bankruptcy multiple times. This is a man who basically rode the wave that Obama created when it comes to the economy. And then towards the end of his administration, his time in the White House, the economy began to go south. Um, but people had this perception that somehow he is best for the economy. And I'm going to get to your comments in a second. And the last point that I wanted to raise is this: like, Kamala Harris really wasn't battle tested. Um, that's one of the main reasons why she probably lost because, we all know what happened. Joe Biden had that poor performance during the debate, um, where people were questioning his mental capacity, questioning whether or not he was losing it and all this and that. And rightfully so, because his performance was horrible. That was a horrible performance. And people questioning whether or not he was fit to serve another 4 years, and rightfully so. And because of that, we found ourselves in a situation where he had to bow out of the race, and Kamala Harris basically took his spot and was appointed to run in his place. She was nominated by the Democratic Party, and they proceeded with her as the candidate. And she didn't have enough time to really develop her campaign the way she needed to, unfortunately. She was not battle tested. A lot of times when in most situations, there's a nomination process. The candidates have to compete for the nomination of the party. So they get to battle it out with other members of their party, and they emerge victorious and obtain the nomination. So they are battle tested. They get an opportunity to realize what messages resonate with the people. They get an opportunity to find out what their flaws are, and they get to test those flaws against opposition within their party, and that strengthens them. It sharpens them. It makes them ready to go to battle. where she didn't have that opportunity. And I think that was a weakness. That put her in a weak spot. Because who's to say, like, if she was really battle tested, if this was the traditional process where there's a nomination process that goes on for like a year before the actual election, who's to say that she would have emerged as the nominee? If she went against other contenders. But basically, the party was in a situation where they had to pick a nominee, and the last thing that they wanted to do is have a divided party shortly before the general election. So that's the situation we're in. She wasn't battle tested. And that made her a weaker candidate against Donald Trump, who's basically been running for office for the last 4 years, against Donald Trump, who had to go against strong contenders and emerge, victorious within his party. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about with respect to, lessons learned and reasons why she lost. And so I'm going to look at your comments to see if there's anything that I would like to reply to before I go to this last segment of this live stream. Shout out to everyone tuning in. It's very early in the morning, so I appreciate you all tuning in. I originally meant to do this live stream last night, but I fell asleep. I was like, I'm going to rest for a second, and I ended up falling asleep. So this person says, stop playing a race card and stop making excuses. I mean, these are people that ignore reality. People that say stop playing a race card and all this stuff and stop making excuses. These people live in a fantasy island, man. They don't live in America. They don't realize what's going on in America. They don't have any kind of clue. Either these are white people or ignorant black people that just want to ignore reality. The fact of the matter is, race plays a huge factor in our society. This is a country founded on racism, a country founded on the enslavement of black people, a country founded on genocide against the native people. We just saw an election that was fueled by racism. So only a fool would ignore race. This is not about, quote unquote, playing the race card. You know, in my analysis, I also talked about faults of, Kamala Harris's campaign. So this is not about, quote unquote, playing some race card. So somebody said, well, how will his policies have a devastating impact? And I laid that out earlier. I already mentioned that. You may have tuned in late, but I'll just mention, reiterate a couple of points about that. The biggest and most obvious one is him calling for immunity for police officers. We know that black men are disproportionately targeted and brutalized by police. There are plenty of studies outlining this. And after this live stream goes up, I will post links in the comments and probably in the description of reports done that outline, these huge disparities. So this man is giving police, he wants to give police immunity. That means these police will have immunity when they brutalize, when they harass and racially profile and kill black people. They will have immunity if this man has his way. He supports stop and frisk. That means that he supports a program that has been found to be racially discriminatory. As I mentioned earlier, in New York City, they had a stop and frisk program where they would target and harass black men simply for being black and living in certain neighborhoods. They would stop them and frisk them and harass them. And that was found to be unconstitutional by a New York federal court. But yet and still, that's something that Donald Trump wants to implement. So that's one example. And we know that with more interaction between black people and police, there's more brutality, more racial profile, etc. So those are two examples. And the last example is this. This man wants to basically whitewash history. He was on I think it's Fox and Friends. He was on the Fox and Friends program where he talked about how he wanted to eliminate the Department of Education and he wanted to basically defund schools where they actually teach about Black history. So those are just a couple of examples of his devastating positions on issues that will have a devastating impact on us. And then you look at the erosion of affirmative action. The Supreme Court justices that he appointed voted to eliminate affirmative action, a program that benefits Black people such as myself. They want to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what Donald Trump is about. So those are just a few examples. I don't want to reiterate a lot of points that I made earlier. And okay, so Donna Foster mentioned that she flip flopped too much and she was in charge of the border and did nothing. Those are some valid points. Those are some very valid points. And they go to that whole point that I made about the lack of sincerity, this lack of authenticity, because she did flip her positions when she decided to run for president. She flipped her position on fracking and other issues and stuff like that. She appeared to be like a chameleon. I mean, and then, so that is an issue. That is a huge issue. Like, for instance, her campaign ran different ads in different communities. Like like in Michigan, she ran ads where she was talking about how concerned she was for the civilians in Gaza. And then in Pennsylvania, she ran an ad talking about how she was so in favor and in support of Israel. Her campaign ran those ads, so she was trying to have it both ways. Yeah, and all that does is come off as fake and phony and insincere. And as I pointed out in the video that I played for you all, there was so many times where she was asked simple questions and she was very evasive. She just didn't answer those questions, and it comes across like you're trying to hide something. It comes across like you're sticking to some kind of script that somebody has written for you instead of actually just being yourself. And I think that hurt her greatly. And that's one of the things that I had pointed out earlier, and that goes against this whole false narrative that somebody made in the comments where they were saying that I'm playing the quote unquote race card. It's like people want to silence Black people. When we talk about legitimate issues, you have these people that want to silence us by labeling us as playing the quote unquote playing the race card. But anyway, I think that Donna, you make some valid points. I'm gonna have to start getting ready pretty soon. And I hear, so this person is saying it's crazy that you've fallen for all the lies the Democratic elitists have fed you. Get off the quote unquote Democrat plantation and they've enslaved your mind. This is complete nonsense. And I don't really know, I can't really see this avatar, if this is a white person or a Black person, but this is so idiotic. The only people on a plantation are those buck dancing, goofy Black folks that are running around with those Make America Great Again hats. Because you got to be on a damn plantation anytime you find yourself sharing a tent with white supremacists. White supremacists support Donald Trump. David Duke support Donald Trump. The KKK literally endorsed this man. If anything is a plantation, that's a plantation. You got these buck dancing, sellout Black folks that have literally been attacked at these Trump rallies. I saw this video of this Black buffoon being attacked by his fellow Trump supporters while at a Trump rally. That is what a plantation looks like, where they're literally beating you, even though you're supposed to be a part of the same group. And then I've seen a video where like these white supremacists were harassing this Black gay Republican that was so, this Black gay Republican, prominent, streamer or whatever, so in search of white validation and support and approval that he went to this MAGA event and was chastised and attacked by these white supremacists. But these people want to, they want to be a part of. That's what a plantation looks like. So miss me with all this rhetoric about a democratic plantation when it's the Republicans that are trying to whitewash our history and wipe us out of history. They're the ones trying to eliminate certain history from being taught in schools. They're the ones that are literally banning black books that are about the black experience. That is what a plantation looks like. They're the ones undermining our voting rights. They're the ones that voted to gut the Voting Rights Act. Those are the Republicans that did that. They're the ones attacking our voting rights, promoting all these policies to suppress black votes. They're the ones that voted to end affirmative action. That's what a plantation looks like. They're the ones that want to literally empower the police to and militarize the police to attack our communities. So miss me with that ridiculous talk about a quote unquote plantation. If anything is a plantation, it's that mega crowd. They are the plantation. So, I just think it's ridiculous that people leave these kind of idiotic comments about a quote unquote plantation. And that's I file that under the same category of these buffoons that talk about how evil Democrats are. They say, well, the Democrats did this and that. They're the ones that supported Jim Crow and was opposed to, emancipation and all this and that. They go back to ancient history when it comes to Democrats that paint Democrats as being the real racist party. When those same Democrats that they're talking about literally became Republicans as a result of the Southern strategy. They became the Republicans. That's why it's no coincidence that the Jim Crow South is dominated by Republicans. So you're talking to the one wrong person when you want to talk about a quote unquote plantation. And somebody's talking about money. We had money in our pockets when Trump was elected. That is, ridiculous. Some of these people have been bought and paid for. They support Donald Trump because he gave them a quote unquote gave them a stimulus check. They are no different than Judas, who sold out Jesus for for a few coins. That's how they are. They sold out their community for a tiny, insignificant little check that they were given. Um, yeah, I see Ernie made the point that I made earlier about her not being able to separate herself from the administration. So, this person is saying the Democrats are the party of slavery and Jim Crow. Again, those Dixiecrats, the ones that were in favor of Jim Crow, literally became Republicans after the Southern strategy. Look that history up. Look up how people like Strom Thurmond became, Republicans. Those Dixiecrats, those people that were opposed to civil rights, how they became Republicans after the Southern strategy. Look up the Southern strategy. Yeah, so those are a few points that I wanted to make. And then, the one last thing that I wanted to mention is this, man. A lot of people, are rightfully upset as a result of this election. A lot of people, some people are frankly crying as a result of this horrible outcome that we see. And my message to them, to the people who are in the dumps and who are depressed and all that kind of stuff because of this election, my message to them is it's time for you to wipe your tears. After you cried it out, It's time for you to wipe your tears, stand up, and fight like hell because we have a fight on our hands. The last thing that we need to do is just sulk and cry and feel down about what has happened here. We need to be determined and not deterred. That's what we need to be. It is time for us to fight. And none of us should really be surprised by what has happened. This is how um, things have always happened in America. This is America. This is what happens in this country. We saw with emancipation. Black people were emancipated. We had reconstruction going on where, black people were given certain opportunities, where you had black people elected to higher office for the first time ever. You had black colleges and universities being open where black people were given opportunities to higher education, and they had protection by federal troops protecting them. And then there was a compromise, and we saw the end of Reconstruction, and we saw the emergence of Jim Crow and the Black codes and all that kind of stuff. We saw the backlash, the white lash that the Black community faced. We saw the terrorism from the KKK and all that kind of stuff. So with that progress that we experienced, there was a setback. And then after that, you had the civil rights movement. You had the civil rights movement where we had certain gangs. We got the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act. We had, black people acquire more education, have greater opportunities in this country. And then you had the Southern strategy that I mentioned earlier, where you had the Republican Party, out of desperation, decide that they wanted to convert a lot of these Southern Democrats into Republicans by pushing an anti-civil rights agenda. And that's how many of those Dixiecrats became Republicans, because the Republican Party played to hatred. They played to racial fears and anxiety within the white community. So you had a lot of white people coming out and supporting those Republicans. That's why, as I said before, that the South became Republican, because they saw that as an avenue to attack civil rights. So you had the Reagan era, where there were reversals. You had the Bush era where, they attacked, the gains that black people had made. And so later, you had the election of President Obama, to President of the United States. And in response to that, you had the Tea Party movement emerge, a racist movement, um, another example of backlash to advancements that the Black community has made. You had that movement, which basically became the Make America Great Again movement led by Donald Trump. Donald Trump's election, his first election, was a response to the progress that we made in this country. It was a response to the fact that we had a black president in the government, in the United States. It was a reaction to that. It was a hatred of that. Anybody who remembers that the Tea Party era can vouch for this, where they launched all these racist attacks against President Obama. And Donald Trump and the MAGA movement was a part of that. They are a reaction to that. They are a reaction to the election of President Obama. They are a reaction to the election of a black vice president. That's what they are a reaction to. They are a modern day hate movement. And it's just a shame that some of our lost and ignorant people actually think that that's some movement that's going to benefit them, when really it's nothing but a modern day white supremacist movement. And I saw a Latino person leave some comment about how they're Latino, they're conservative, and all this and that. Um, you are an idiot. You are supporting a party that hates Latinos, where you had a comedian literally joke about Latinos, joke about Latinos having all these babies, one of those stereotypes that they have about Latinos. Literally called Puerto Rico a island of garbage. And they're not talking about literal garbage. They're saying that the Puerto Ricans are garbage, that Latinos are garbage. You have a president that's literally talking about mass deportations of Latinos and other immigrants. But yet and still, you had these goofy, ignorant Latinos running around here supporting this man. As I said, 41% of Latinos voted for Donald Trump because many of these Latinos don't even identify as Latinos. They want to be white. And many of them will be quick to tell you that they don't identify with Black people. They don't even, some of them are literally Afro Latinos, but they don't identify as being Black at all. They want to be white, even though those same white people that they want to share a tent with can't stand them. Those same white people fear the browning of America. That "Make America Great Again" slogan just means make America white again. But these people are too ignorant and too lost to understand that. No, they're too ignorant and too lost to understand basics. Um, so I can't really take them, I can't take somebody seriously who calls themselves a quote unquote Latino conservative and they support Donald Trump. So anyway, let's see. So I see this person, this troll in the comments talking all this stuff about how you support a party that thinks men can be women and all this and that. And again, that's another thing that Donald Trump ran on. He ran on this anti-trans people agenda. Again, playing to people's fears and hatred. Playing to people's fears and hatred of trans people and stuff like that, when at the end of the day, that's just a distraction. That is so irrelevant in the big scheme of things. The the whole issue of trans people and all that stuff is really like insignificant compared to all the issues that I had mentioned earlier. It's really insignificant. It only impacts a small group of people, but they want to highlight this to divide division, to divide people, to uh, promote fear and all that kind of stuff. That's what this man ran on. He ran on hatred towards trans people. And that's causing people to be distracted, being distracted away from the fact that, our voting rights are under attack, being distracted away from, diversity and equity and inclusion being under attack, being distracted away from the real possibility of police having immunity to brutalize Black people. They want you to be focused on some trans issue that doesn't even impact the vast majority of our people, on something that's really irrelevant in the big scheme of things. That's what they want you to be focused on. But I'm not going to waste any more time talking to these trolls. Those are my quick thoughts about this election. I just had to, highlight these things, and I just want to encourage people to not be deterred, but we should be determined. To not be apathetic, but to stand up and fight because we're in a fight for our lives. Now is the time to escalate our struggle for human and civil rights. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think about this election. What was your reaction when you found out that Donald Trump won this election? Peace and blessings. Have a great day.